What defines success?
When you feel so strongly in your business idea and you have really strong convictions, there's not much that can get in the way of that.
What happens when you get knocked down?
I'm not going to lie and say it's easy. We certainly are working very hard, and the last 2 years have been fast-paced, but we rely on each other a lot because at the end of the day, this company will succeed if we're both focused, well-rested, able to make decisions that are well thought out.
What makes some people radiate?
We're always thinking through kind of what are our friends going through, what are we going through, and how can we create a better experience, a better product, a better brand.
This is Radiate.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining Radiate, the place where we interview some of the world's most successful people to find out how they work their way to the top. I've gotten a few emails recently from people asking to hear about the success stories of young women entrepreneurs, and I immediately thought about two women I met recently, the founders of Lola. It's a subscription service for, yes, tampons. They're one of the most buzzed about startups in New York City, two Dartmouth grads who wanted to create and deliver feminine products in a better way. Plenty of men have backed them, including famed New York City entrepreneur and venture capitalist Kenny Lerer. From the outside, it looks so easy what they created, but as founders Jordana Kier and Alexandra Friedman explain, it took a lot of grit and a lot of hard work. Enjoy. Alex, Jordana, thank you so much for joining me on this Radiate podcast. So let's start off with how you both came up with this idea. How did it all get started? Alex, you want to start first?
Sure. So the concept was originally a delivery business. We never had tampons when we needed them, and the idea really came about to try and meet that need. But as we did research into the feminine care market and really understood the products that were out there and what the mainstream brand stood for, we realized we couldn't figure out what was in the products that were being sold that we had been using for 15 or 20 years. And at that moment, Lola was born because we realized we couldn't figure out what was in the products, and we wanted to solve the massive transparency issue in feminine care. So today, Lola is a subscription service tampon business with 100% cotton tampons, where we tell you exactly what's in the products. They're 100% natural, and you can get a customized box delivered to your door every month or every other month. Skip, adjust, cancel anytime.
Jordana, did you realize that there was some sort of, market need, or was it just sort of gut instinct? Did you do any kind of data research before you and Alex got together?
I mean, we had done a bunch of just reading market, any kind of market research we could get our hands on. At the time, I was in business school at Columbia and, kind of utilized their library of resources as much as I could. I remember at the end of my summer internship, before school started, it was empty and I was in the library just trying to print anything I possibly could that would, help us kind of understand the market and the entire industry at large. When we started building the business, a big component of what we needed to prove was, would women care enough to switch? It's one thing to educate and be made aware of something, but it's quite another to actually spend money in a different way than you have and change your behavior that becomes consistent with kind of the message that you're hearing. And so what Alex and I did almost as kind of a first project when we started working together was to launch a big survey. It was to talk to as many women as we could. It was, in one-on-one calls. It was focus groups, just to get, and I mean, it's funny now, periods and the talk of tampons and the tampon tax. There's a lot that's kind of out into the ether right now that has made it much easier for people in general to talk about these topics. But 2.5 years ago, that was not the case. And so really, Alex and I, I don't want to call us pioneers, but we were in a sense, starting the conversation in a way that
few women had really chatted about it before. And so, we went into these focus groups that we had set up, and it was friends or friends of friends. And so, some women we knew very well, some women we really didn't know at all. The first 5 minutes were a little bit uncomfortable, but, after you kind of get people kind of talking about this very common thing that happens to all of us, you had women kind of like clamoring for, time and attention, because they wanted to tell this other hilarious story that they had just thought of when they had gotten their period at a very inopportune time. So, it was really, that was probably the start, and seeing how women reacted really gave Alex and myself the validation to move forward and raise some capital.
So Alex, when you were raising capital though, I mean, it's hard enough to talk about this with other women, but how did you talk about it with men that you wanted money from?
We were very direct. We knew that a big part of the pitch was education, and that a lot of people we were talking to either didn't use the product, had never seen the product, weren't super familiar with all of the words that we use to describe the product. And so it really was like pitching any other business where the audience didn't use the product before. And for the most part, everyone we met with was completely comfortable with the topic, not super squeamish. In a lot of instances, when we were pitching men, they would ask for samples and give them to their female friends or girlfriends, sisters, wives to test the product and be able to really get that firsthand feedback from somebody who used the product.
And what made you think, Alex, of making this a subscription service? I mean, how did you come up with that idea?
The real impetus behind Lola is to try and solve the long list of issues with the feminine care market. So transparency, as we discussed before, is the number one issue. Women deserve to know what's in this product because it goes inside their body and they use it for almost a week every month for 40 years. So this is a product that, like all of the other products that touch your body, we should know what's in them. But there were also a lot of other issues with the market, namely brand and access. So on the brand side, the mainstream brands aren't particularly relatable. They come in flowery pink boxes. They don't really speak to us. And we wanted to change that and make the experience more sophisticated, more real, and have the brand have a voice that we could relate to. On the access side, we were never prepared. Every month our periods come and we simply weren't prepared. And what we wanted was for a beautiful box from a brand we trust to arrive every month. And so delivery was a really important piece of that, and a very important feature of the business from the beginning, to ensure that we could solve for all three things: better product, better brand, better service.
So Jordana, tell me, so you get together with Alex and you have this idea, you talk to, a bunch of women and you figure out that, yeah, there actually is a need. There are women willing to talk about it, and they feel that they want more out of their feminine care products. So what is the first step? I mean, for those who are listening and say, okay, I've got a great idea, but what is my first step? What is the first step after you figure out and you validate your idea? What do you do?
I mean, you try not to think about everything at once, but also have to think about everything at once. So, everything and anything from make a list of all the questions you have. I mean, that's kind of what we were doing in the beginning. We were thinking of all the questions we needed to have answered. We were thinking about all the experts in various different e-com companies that we knew through our networks that we could tap into and have and help them, or have them help us navigate through these various different questions. So, for example, Alex and I both don't have any development chops, and so okay, how are we going to build our website? What does our website look like? How do we, how does it function, and also how does it educate? Because we were obviously also trying to tackle this very this very sort of stigmatized part of a woman's life, but then also and encourage her to switch because it was easy, it was better for her, it was convenient, and that we were kind of two women solving a problem that she didn't know she had yet. So the website was a great example of kind of a piece of the business that we had a ton of questions around. around, we could obviously look to all of these various other different companies that had been born online. Warby Parker, Harry's, Everlane are great examples, Everlane in particular, because I think the level of transparency that they communicate to their customers was very similar to what we wanted to do as well.
Right.
And so you look at all these websites and you say, okay, what's their checkout process like? So that was kind of, that was a piece of it, the website, obviously then the product, right? I mean, where do you get the product? Let's try various different products to make sure that we're going to be selling the one that we want to sell. How do we collaborate with the manufacturer to kind of create a more Lola experience in the product? What does the packaging look like? I mean, there's just so many different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And obviously it's very overwhelming. And I think what Alex and I tried to do was almost map out, okay, well, what's super pressing right now? Like, what do we have to maybe show our investors or potential investors?
Okay, so Alex, I know it's from my own experience right now, it's really, really messy, being an entrepreneur and starting a business. So how do you organize all that? What Jordana just said, I mean, how do you organize all of that in your head? And then how do you also kind of disseminate that to your team so that it's organized for them?
Communication is really the key, probably communication and spreadsheets. From the very beginning, we were a team of 2, and we were able to outline the various functions of the business and make sure that there was a leader on each. So, we try to balance the workload evenly between us, and Jordana focuses on a lot of the operational, logistics, finance, internal management of the business, and I'm doing a lot of the external facing stuff like marketing, press, and brand. And to this day, after 2 years, we still both manage those areas of the business, but it's also very collaborative where we sit together all day, every day. We have regularly scheduled touch bases where we're reviewing progress across different areas of the business. And as we've hired in and grown, we were hiring in to meet the highest impact needs, within those different areas of the business. So as long as we're communicating and organized about who owns what, who's driving what, and who the final decision maker is on what, we're set.
So who was your first hire after you two?
So we hired a head of marketing who's been with us for a little bit over a year now. She joined us before we launched the business and really helped us establish our brand voice, messaging across different channels, how to access customers across the United States, and build out our early email marketing program.
Yeah, that's great. And you have a great brand and you have a great brand presence and a voice as well. Jordana, I'm curious, going back on the investing side and presenting, I'm sure a lot of women entrepreneurs have this question, as I do myself, which is, did you ever feel walking into a room that you were underestimated and you blew them away with your presentation, just being a woman entrepreneur?
Because we were coming in with this very, female-centric idea that Alex and I were incredibly passionate about. Frankly, like we felt like we had the ammunition we needed to convince them that this was something they should invest in, from both, the market size to the, potential expansion of the market into different ancillary products, to the fact that this was kind of a need to have. It wasn't a nice to have. There was a subscription element to it. There were a lot of factors that would be convincing to any investor. And I think, Alex and I we leveraged the fact that, we were experts in this product because we had been using this product for years and years and could answer a lot of very basic questions that a lot of investors had because they had never even touched a tampon before.
Right.
And so I think that gave us a lot of power that we used. And, it's also, look, periods can also be very funny. And so there was a little bit of breaking the ice in the beginning where we would kind of throw a tampon in the investor and say, look, open it, see what it looks like. And, that always got a little laugh. And, it was kind of a great way to start to develop the relationships with our various investors because, we knew who could kind of hang and who couldn't.
Right. Who could talk about it and not get weird or squeamish or whatnot.
Exactly.
Now, Jordana, what would be your best advice or tip for anybody who's fundraising? I mean, what did you learn from that process? What would be the best piece of advice you could give someone?
I would say start as early as you can to get in front of people who can give you that very objective feedback. I think it's always really scary, especially when you've thought of an idea. It's a passion project. It's something you're thinking 24/7 about, and it's very scary to kind of open yourself up to criticism or constructive feedback, especially those first few times. But it was really valuable to kind of get questions from investors that Alex and I had thought of or had not thought of, and, needed to invest more time to understand, a specific distribution channel or whatever. I think getting the questions that we hadn't thought of asked of us, really helped us hone the business, understand where we wanted to focus, where we could outsource, getting in front of people kind of who could give us that objective feedback, and that tough love, not just your friends and family who say, oh, that sounds great. That's not going to be helpful to you at the end of the day.
No, I mean, you want critical feedback. So what was the most common question you got from investors?
I mean, the one that comes to mind, I don't know if it was the most common, but the one that comes to mind was, why are there different sizes of tampons? Like, is it for the different size women? And, that was a very, that was a common question from men a lot of the time, and that, I think that spoke to the fact that, this whole industry has been pretty untouched for so many years. And at the end of the day, it has to be a conversation between both men and women, because women are, the primary consumers of the household typically, and they're buying products for their partners, their kids, anybody else who's living in the house. And so men should be a part of that conversation to understand what women are buying,
right.
Not just for themselves, but for the rest of the family. And so, I don't know. I thought that was a common question, and it was one that, it allowed Alex and myself to really educate the person on the other side of the table.
That's interesting. Alex, Jordana was talking about feedback, and I'm kind of curious, as you're going through product reviews, because, you have a consumer product and people go online and they write reviews, and most of them are great, but, you will have people who say, well, I didn't like this product because of this or that. How do you deal with that kind of feedback from consumers? What do you do?
So we try to collect as much feedback as we can across the product, the brand, the service. We're talking to customers live. Jordana and I make time every month to talk to folks about what they like and don't like about the brand. And we're actively collecting feedback from our customer experience helpline. And basically what we do on a weekly basis is aggregate all the feedback into categories to see, what are the hot button issues and what might be one-offs, and then prioritize them. So, for the most part, we hear questions about service. If somebody doesn't get a box delivered on time, or maybe they changed their address and changed it too late, we want to make sure that we're able to send all of the product to folks at the right time. And so those are kind of a majority of the issues that we hear about.
Is delivery.
Logistics are a big piece of our business. For the most part, the brand and the product really resonate with women, and it's really about honing our day-to-day systems to make sure we get women what they need when they need it. And we've done remarkably well so far. But we're actively tracking and collecting as much feedback as we possibly can to make the business the best it can be.
What's been the most surprising piece of feedback you've gotten from a customer?
That's a great question. We get a lot of really positive feedback, and every now and then we get positive feedback on something that, maybe we're insecure about, something that, there are a handful of things that we spent a ton of time developing with a lot of conviction that these are the things that our customer needs. And then there are other things that kind of, fell into place or were second on our list of priorities. And when we hear really positive feedback on those things, we're always, our heart is always warmed.
Like what, for instance? Can you point to an example?
Yeah, so, we set up the system for adjusting your subscription as simply and best we could. So a customer, can sign up for a 1-month order with, 18 regulars in a box and get it every month. And we wondered, will our customer easily and seamlessly be able to figure out how to log into her account and adjust this whenever she needs? Will she be able to skip an order? Will she be able to change what comes in the box? Will she be able to do this seamlessly on desktop and mobile? And we did our best to set it up right. But we consistently get a lot of feedback about how easy the site is to use and how easy it is to manage subscriptions. Right. And we're always, really thrilled to hear that.
So Jordana, how do you and Alex deal with conflict? When you guys disagree about something, how do you work that out?
Sometimes rock, paper, scissors.
Not kidding.
Look, I mean, simple but proven.
Yeah, simple but effective. Most of the time I have to say we're pretty aligned. I think it's actually pretty amazing given the fact that we met, about a year before we launched the business but that whole year really we're working on the business together. It's pretty amazing that, I think our approach to the brand and our aesthetic is actually incredibly similar. So we don't get we don't really conflict, butt heads at all when it comes to really what the brand should stand for, who our customer is, how do we get in touch with her, where do we reach her and where do we not reach her. I don't know really what our conflicts are based on. They're much more, I don't know how else to say it, but like they're pretty insignificant conflicts.
Right.
We are aligned when it comes to kind of where the brand is going and where we want to take it and how we want to build it. So I know that's a boring answer for you, but I really can't think of anything we've really butt heads on.
That's great for your business that you are so aligned. But what about bringing people on? I mean, you're building out your team. Have you brought people on that just didn't work out and you had to let them go? And if you did, what did you learn from that?
That's such a good question. We've definitely dealt with some, we've made decisions that eventually we realized they were not the right decisions for the business and for the team. I think we've learned, something that we've definitely learned and that, kind of goes back to the way that Alex and I first worked together was, really like a trial or some sort of project that somebody can work on with us just to get a sense of, how do they think, how deep in the weeds can they get, but also stepping outside of that and really thinking through the numbers or, the way that the brand should resonate with women. An example of that is, when we were hiring for our operations, we have a few different exercises that candidates go through now to make sure that, their analytical skills or their quantitative skills are kind of what we expect. But then also their qualitative sort of analyses, looking at different problems and kind of thinking through, okay, well, where can I decrease my costs and how could I do that? And really thinking through, not just like building a model, but really thinking through those numbers and what each of them means, and how they tell a story that can also be helpful for marketing or helpful for customer service. We've been really lucky to find, this kind of early team.
And how many people do you have?
So we're 7 full-time.
Okay.
We have 2 interns who are wonderful. They're with us for the summer. And we have 2 additional people joining us at the end of the summer as well.
So clearly finding people, I hear from entrepreneurs all the time and CEOs and anybody who has to hire. Hiring talent is extremely, extremely difficult. Hiring good talent. So how have you found talent?
It's really been pretty half and half inbound and also, utilizing our networks. So I'd say about a few people who have joined the team emailed us their resume. We had a job opening on our site and they emailed and we got to know them over the interview process. And then a few others we kind of sought out, whether it was companies that we thought, were excellent in a specific function or somebody in our network knew somebody who was looking for a job. It's really been a combination of all of those things. But the thing that also Alex and I have probably learned, and it's like this old kind of tenet, I think, of like building businesses, which is hire slow, fire fast. And I think especially that's very hard to follow, just given the fact that startups are running a mile, a billion miles a minute. But it really is, I think we've learned that it's really, you want to hold out for the right person. At the end of the day, if you hire somebody just because they're a work body, you're going to end up going through the same process in 3 months or 6 months. So put in the time now.
Right. I mean, wait until you find the exact right person, and not to just have somebody there so you can say somebody is there working with you.
Exactly.
Alex, I'm curious about another topic that I hear a lot of questions about is balance, right? How do you balance work and your personal life? So, is being an entrepreneur, you have to absolutely be 24/7 or not, or maybe you can find some balance as you're building a company?
The key is making sure your team is strong and that somebody is always available. So we've been able to find balance individually by being co-founders, which I think is a really valuable thing for both of us to be able to have balance. I imagine that if either of us were doing this alone, it would feel a lot more grueling. There would be a lot more kind of late nights. Every fire drill would have to be dealt with
Right.
by one person. But because there are two of us, we're able to communicate and figure out the best times for us both to be online and available and really make time to work out, get enough sleep, see our family and friends. I'm not going to lie and say it's easy. We certainly are working very hard, and the last 2 years have been fast paced. But we rely on each other a lot to make sure that we both have time off, because at the end of the day, this company will succeed if we're both focused, well rested, able to make decisions that are well thought out. And if we can take a little bit of the load off each other and the team, and everyone can do that for each other, we can all find balance while running a very fast-paced early-stage business.
And I find this a lot. So with co-founders, even if you are taking time off, I mean, you're always on, right? I mean, you're always, you'll be there if you need to be for the business, and you're 100% dedicated to building it. But what about for the people that you bring on? I mean, how do you manage them and expectations between work and life?
The key thing in any early stage hire for the first 10 people joining a business is making sure that they're passionate about building and growing this business, and all being aligned that we want to create something great together is really what drives everyone on the team. So as leaders and as managers, we really try to lead by example, show that we're committed to making sure that if there's an emergency or a fire drill that has to be dealt with, we're there to deal with it. And we want everybody to feel like a leader and an owner in the business and step up and help out whenever needed across all functions of the business. And we've really been able to do that, I think, because we're both so committed to making this happen. And we've found such excellent, high caliber, driven, smart, passionate people who really want to make it happen. Yep. So to be honest, it has all come together with a lot of hard work, but almost effortlessly, because everyone wants to contribute.
Jordana, how do you deal with overcoming fear? I ask a lot of people about this who are very successful, but they, they might run into an obstacle. I mean, how do you deal with fear?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know if Alex would say this about me. I don't think I'm that afraid.
That's good.
I think it's when you feel so strongly in your business idea and you have really strong convictions, there's not much that can get in the way of that.
How about mistakes? What about dealing with, can you think of like a big mistake that you may have made with this business early on and what you learned from it?
I mean, I think it goes back to probably just like, finding the right early stage team. We had a few people on the team who, it just ended up that it wasn't the right fit, frankly, on both ends. So, I mean, we've made some hiring mistakes. I mean, just getting back to kind of the fear, I think what stresses me out, frankly, is probably just like the stakes of the business, right? Like I really want this to succeed. I know Alex does. I know our team does. And we work extremely hard every day to make sure that it does succeed. But that doesn't, I think you probably also need a little bit of fear and paranoia to propel you and to keep you hungry and working very urgently on various different tasks of the business. So I don't have fear like when I pitch to people, I have fear more that it's maybe that a little bit of fear that helps me, keep going and working really hard to make sure that this does succeed.
Alex, I'm curious about, some of the recent news about Birchbox not doing as well and other subscription services. Does that worry you about Lola?
We've certainly been following all of the other subscription box stories and have been inspired by them and all of their successes over the last 5+ years. I think, for us, we're really trying to just focus on what we're building here, learn lessons from the other businesses. We certainly, know the Birchbox founders and know a lot of the other founders of the other subscription businesses, and they've been able to provide us with incredible advice from early days and tips for how to grow the business, how to scale to more, even greater scale, and how to hire all the right people. And it really feels like, we certainly have learned a lot from their experiences. Looking at the market today, I think, and as we talk to investors, there's certainly a question about whether to be hyper laser focused on growth or to be laser focused on profitability early. And, in a lot of instances, those two goals can conflict. And so, what we're really thinking through within the first year of business at Lola is, what is the right way to grow the business? What's the most responsible way to grow the business? And really take into account the context around us to figure out the best path forward.
And Jordana, on a final note, where would you like to see Lola in a year? I mean, what's going to be the big challenge, and how are you going to get over it and get to your goal?
Good question. I think in a year we'd like to be, the vision for the company is to, be able to be a one-stop shop for women who need anything for their reproductive menstrual needs. So ideally a year from now, we have a bunch of additional products on the market that can, help solve for some of these, inconveniences and very sensitive and intimate things that women need throughout their lives. I think something that Alex and I feel very passionate about is that we're our own customers. And so, we're always thinking through kind of what are our friends going through, what are we going through, and how can we create a better experience, a better product, a better brand, that speaks to women like, the age that they are, not, stopping when they're 13, 14, and just kind of relying on the status quo. A lot of these issues have just, become much more mainstream, and we're excited to be part of that conversation. So, I think in a year we'd like to be kind of a leading company in those categories, and also a place where women can go to get a lot of their questions answered.
That's it for this week. Please stay tuned for next week's episode. And did you know Radiate is now a video platform as well? So instead of just listening, you can now watch great leaders talk about their successes, their failures, and lessons for you. Go to radiateinc.com and watch our videos. Register for premium offerings. This week, we have a great one starring Jack Welch. In the meantime, if you liked what you heard on this podcast, please subscribe and review us on iTunes. Follow radiateinc.com on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for joining us. I'm Betty Lou. Talk to you next week on Radiate.